Welcome inside Black and Gold Organized Team Activity Edition. The Saints are starting their voluntary workouts up, going to the Hall of Fame celebrity golf shootout also, and we'll have plenty of insights from that we heard from Mickey Loomis, Kellen Moore, Cedric Wilson Jr. sounded off. But Jeff, we're getting into the phase 3 of the offseason program in year 1 under head coach Kellen Moore. And it was good to see him, I guess, out on the links, enjoying some downtime, I guess you would call it. I didn't peg Kellen Moore as much of a golfer, but he looked like he did pretty good out there.
Yeah, I don't think Kellen is much of a golfer. I think he's more of a hack, but that's okay. That's what you're here for. I do find this time of year funny because when you say organized team activities, it sounds so boring. But when you say like OTAs, it sounds like, wow, it's something.
Wow, what's that?
It's not. It's boring. It is boring, but we're so starved for stuff to talk about that we're going to talk about it. And yes, they had the celebrity golf shootout. They do it every year. But yeah, so we'll get into that. I just talk about some of the stuff that was said in this first segment, the news, which there's really no news. I want to talk about veteran quarterbacks. I want to talk about attendance, that sort of thing. Second and third segments, we're going to go through my way too early roster projection, which I think is, it's way too early to do this, but I do think there's value in it because it's a lot harder to go into training camp without some sort of baseline of where do I think things are now. And I kind of approach it as not necessarily predicting the future, but if I had to create a 53-man roster today, what would it be? So the second segment's going to be the offense, third segment's going to be defense and special teams. We'll try not to make this 2 hours long, so we're going to speed through a couple of the positions, talk more about the positions that are actually interesting, but there are a lot of interesting positions, so that might be extended. So, maybe let's do it in parts. I don't know. Either way, that's what this episode is going to be. And so one of the questions that we aren't going to answer in the roster segment, but we are going to get to here is, okay, right now you have 4 quarterbacks in this room, none of whom are over the age of 26, and that's Jake Haener. Only 2 of whom have started NFL games. One of them started 6 games, won 1 game that he was pulled from at halftime. None of them have won an NFL game. And it sure seems like the Saints, at least at this point, are not planning to add a veteran quarterback to that mix. And keep in mind, there really aren't any out there that's like, oh, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Like most of the quarterbacks you would have added are done. So at least through OTAs, this team looks ready to roll through with no veteran options.
Yeah, that was kind of my take on it, too. You hear from Loomis, head coach Kellen Moore, and right now it seems like you mentioned they're going to stand pat. I could see maybe when, other teams start whittling down their rosters and potentially if a veteran becomes available with a little more playing experience to add to the roster. But like you said, do you really want to bring in a Carson Wentz that's out there right now? How much is he going to add value to this quarterback room, except that he has playing experience?
Yeah, this is what Mickey had to say the other day when he was asked on this subject.
You think about a young quarterback room, like essentially everybody's really young.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're young. It's a young group, enthusiastic. There's talent there, and I think we got a great coaching staff. I mean, we got 3 former quarterbacks, with Kellen, with Doug Nussmeier, and with Scott in the room with them. So I think that's a good mix.
But is it unusual to have a whole quarterback room? I know it's unusual, but I guess could you kind of put it in perspective where there isn't currently, I don't think there's currently one regular season win among that whole group? Just give some perspective on how you view that as not a problem or whatever.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But I don't think that's rare, and I think there's been lots of quarterback rooms around the league over the years where they've got a young group and they got to develop them, and I wouldn't say it's ideal, but that's the hand we've got dealt with this right now.
So I will challenge one thing he said there, which is it is definitely rare to be in the situation the Saints are in. It is not necessarily unheard of to be in the situation the Saints are in. but it's definitely rare. Like, this is not something you see happen very often. I know Noah.com pulled a few examples of teams that went into a season without any type of veteran option or any quarterback that started games at the NFL level. One of them was a Seahawks team that Mickey Loomis was also a part of in terms of the front office. Another was a Panthers team that went 1-15. So, like, they are in mostly uncharted territory, definitely for the Saints. This is the most inexperienced QB room the Saints have had probably in franchise history. So, yeah, I mean, it's not normal. Is it the end of the world? Is it a major problem? That's a different question because, and this is what you'll hear, and this is fair, you have Kellen Moore, who is a former quarterback, who's worked with young quarterbacks. He's never gone into a season with a starting quarterback over the age of 26 years old. Dak Prescott was 26 when they got together. Kellen was also his teammate when he was a rookie back in 2016, so he's watched that process. He was the veteran quarterback in the room to lead that group that the Saints don't actually have. So he has at least has experience of what you need to do and how that can go well. Justin Herbert, I think, was 25 when he coached him. Jalen Hurts was 26. So, we'll see. Scott Tolzien's another former quarterback. Doug Nussmeiser, another former quarterback. Scott Linehan's a former quarterback, former head coach, former offensive coordinator. So you got pieces that can help these guys develop, but it's not normal is really what, like, the people are going to try to normalize this. The coaches are going to try to normalize this. It's not normal. It is very unusual to be in the situation the Saints are in.
And a lot of that definitely has to do with the kind of surprising retirement from Derek Carr. And that was one thing Mickey Loomis did not want to talk about that at all. I thought that was kind of telling of just how it seems, at least, he's pretty ticked off. And it's like, I think we've said everything that needed to be said about it.
Unfolded and you all reaching an amicable agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said everything that we need to say on that.
You've been in the league a long time. You've seen a lot of different situations. Is this one of the more unique, strange, crazy situations you've dealt with a quarterback maybe in his prime or in his 30s that just decided to part ways?
Yeah, well, look, he was injured. So we've had, I've been around a long time, so there's not many things that I haven't seen. You have injuries that come up and things that you may not think are that serious at one time that end up becoming serious. So from that aspect, I would say it's not rare, but it doesn't happen very often. And so listen, you get curveballs in this game all the time, and this is one that we have to deal with.
Again, it is rare. It is not normal to see a quarterback that was believed to be largely healthy going into an offseason suddenly retire. Again, there are examples of it. It is not unheard of, but it does not happen very often. The best example Drew Brees brought up on Sports Talk a few days ago or last week is Andrew Luck. Like, that's really the only similar example of a guy that you felt like was a starting quarterback. If he had come back, would have been the starting quarterback, suddenly decided to retire mid-offseason, right? Like, that's a good example of it, but it's not something that you see often, right? Drew Brees retired. He was in his 40s. Tom Brady retired. He was in his 40s, right? Phillip Rivers found a way to play several more years, staving off retirement. Eli Manning was an interesting example because he was still healthy enough to play, but he kind of got ran out by the Giants for Daniel Jones prior to making the decision to retire, didn't want to go anywhere else. So again, no, this is not a normal situation. This is a highly irregular situation. That doesn't mean the Saints can't navigate it and have success navigating it, but to try to play it off like this is something that happens all the time, it absolutely does not. And that's something that we can move forward from. But it would be nice if people could stop trying to pretend to me that this is something that's, oh, yeah, sure, of course, yeah, we no, this isn't just a curveball. This is you replace the baseball with a block of ice. Anyway.
It just sort of seemed like Mickey Loomis is a bit ticked off and really didn't have much to say about it, or didn't want to say much to us about it. Kind of like, you remember when Sean Payton retired, it was kind of, he put off his comments and we never got those from him.
It's still too emotional for him.
Right.
He's still not ready to talk about it. It's been years. Yeah, no, I make a joke about that every couple of months in the media. It's like, you think this is the time Mickey Loomis is going to talk about Sean Payton? But no, I mean, so we'll see. Again, it's not about whether, it's not something that you need to look at and say like, this happens all the time, so okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's weird, and so there's really no great example for how it's going to go. And we can't really look at past examples and say, well, they did this, they did this. It is almost uncharted territory for basically every team in the NFL. So we'll see. You're going to have a quarterback competition. You're going to have a lot of young quarterbacks battling for this. We're going to talk more about that in the roster segment in terms of, okay, who's going to, where do we see that going? But let's move forward. OTAs coming up. As always, this time of year, I feel it's important to remind everyone optional. That's not what the O stands for, but it is a word. These are not mandatory. These are optional, organized team activities.
That might be better than organized, optional teamwork activities.
Yeah, but I mean, they are organized too. So I think organized is important because you can have team activities that are kind of, like if the team isn't organizing them, the players can do whatever team activities they want. These are organized by the team, thus they are kind of handled by the CBA. And so they can only do certain things. If the players want to get together and throw on the side, they can do that all they want. But the coaches can't be involved in it and so forth. But this was Kellen talking about attendance and his expectations for attendance this week. And once we hear that, we can go forth.
It's been good. Obviously, it's a voluntary phase, and so certainly there's guys that have different circumstances in their life, and we certainly understand that. But I feel like guys have been here a ton of it, and they've really been participating, been engaged. It's been a really good process.
Yeah. So again, kind of making it clear, not mandatory. And why do I bring that up? Well, this week, Alvin Kamara made it pretty clear. He didn't explicitly say he wasn't going to be there, but he did make it pretty clear, hey, I'm going to Jordan, Africa, this week. So unless he planned to make that a 24-hour turnaround, I don't think he's going to be at OTAs. And that's not unusual. Alvin has not been a guy who typically goes to these OTA sessions. That said, this is the first year of a new head coach. This is the first year of his 2-year, $24.5 million contract extension, which I believe has some level of workout incentives in it. So I'd be curious to see ultimately what those incentives are, if it needs to be 100% participation, if there's a certain level of participation. Maybe he shows up at one of them or two of them. I don't know. Alvin's not the type of guy who wants to leave money on the table, so we'll see. I know in the past that has been a point of contention, like, we want you here. Clearly, he's not a guy that I'm worried about getting the work done. Never has been. So from that perspective, it's really not a big deal, but he's almost definitely not going to be there on Thursday when we're out there to watch practice. And I'd be surprised if we see him for the second session, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. When Alvin needs to be there, he's going to be there. And I feel like every year we go into it with this discussion, but come mandatory time when he's got to be in the building, Alvin will be there on the field. And there's no doubt to me, like, you could be a Martian coming in to watch practice, never seen football before, and he's going to be somebody that stands out where you're going to go, who is that guy? Because he looks like and moves like a different guy out there than everybody else. He's that elite.
Yeah, physically, there's no concern whatsoever in terms of how he's going to come again. He went out to Colorado to work with his longtime trainer over the offseason. Like, he does the work. I do think there's a level of, hey, it's a new system and we want to build something here. Sure. And we want everyone involved from the jump. I get that. Some people that works for more than others. Like, yeah, the team wants everybody there. They're not going to, they're going to play the game of like, yeah, it's optional. They want everybody there. That said, if there was a player I was least concerned about actually being there, it would be Alvin. And he just doesn't, it's not his process. His process works, right? There's been no issue with his process. So we'll see. But that's really the only news we have so far. And I don't want to, in past years, I've kind of guessed who might be there, who might not be. I don't want to play that game this year because there's so much I don't know in terms of, what Kellen's demands are, what his expectations are. I think you'll probably get better attendance this year than most because it's a new head coach. But, we're going to make a big deal about it. I remember Mike Thomas not being there was a big thing for Bobby, and then Mike showed up and everyone was like, whoa, so we'll see how either way, we'll be out there on Thursday. It'll be hot as shit. I might have to, usually I don't splurge for a cooling towel for these ones because it's only one a week. I might have to because, man, it is hot this week. So all these players who thought rookie minicamp was hot, they'll be getting a baptism in Louisiana humidity. But yeah, so
Alvin's getting his heat training in Africa.
Maybe definitely not cooler there. Although I don't know, maybe
Right.
it is in some parts of it. Who's to say? But
One guy though, I think it's safe to say we know Cam Jordan will be there because he's just a football junkie.
Yeah, Cam Jordan will be there. It's the guys who you wonder about. Tyron will be there. DeMario will be there. You don't really have a ton of mid-tier veterans that I wouldn't call team leaders anymore, right?
Right.
Like either you're a veteran with team leader or you're not a veteran. Like a Nathan Shepard maybe, or like a Colin Saunders, maybe they don't show up because they're veterans. But I think these guys are contending for a spot on the roster, right? Like if I feel like I don't have a concrete spot on this roster, I'm going to every workout. And like in the past, like a Paulson Adebo, for example, he was a guy who would skip, and you're like, he's guaranteed a spot. He's not what I would call a team leader, but he's definitely a concrete roster spot. And there's a lot fewer of those on this year's roster than in the past. And we'll get into
Marshawn
that.
too.
Marshawn, yeah, sure. But just, maybe it's the cornerback thing.
Right, exactly.
I don't know. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back and we're going to preview, the offensive side and our way too early 53-man roster projection, kind of go through position by position as we do every year. We're not going to go through every single one of these roster projections on the pod, but I do want to get a kind of a head start of a baseline of where we are, because if we establish a baseline, we can change stuff as we go. So with all that, man, this is Inside Black and Gold. I am Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Thanks, everyone, for listening. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening, wherever you might want to listen. If you're listening on a podcast player, maybe go over to YouTube and see what that's all about. If you're on YouTube, maybe just hit the button on the podcast just to say, hey, that's cool. Good stuff. Anyway, that's all I had to say on that front. We'll be right back. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. This is Inside Black and Gold. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're getting ready for OTAs. We'll be out there on Thursday, but they practice today and tomorrow. We'll be out there for the final day of the session. So we won't be able to tell you. That's one of the issues with OTAs, is we won't be able to tell you, okay, this is what happened on Tuesday or Wednesday. All we can tell you is what we saw. So, for example, if whatever quarterback takes the first rep at OTAs, everyone will be like, oh, he's in front of the quarterback competition. But what if, just to say, hey, Tyler Shuck took the first rep on Tuesday, Jake Haener took the first rep on Wednesday, and Spencer Rattler took the first rep on Thursday. We won't know those first two. So just all that is to say, take that with a grain of salt. We'll talk to Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore was asked about the quarterback competition. We'll play that clip for you. Basically said, not really going to happen right now, but We'll dive into it. This segment, we're going to get into my initial 53-man roster projection, which is obviously way too early to be doing this, but it's really just to establish a baseline. A couple things I'd like to note. I try to keep all of my rookie draft picks in this first one. I try not to cut anyone before I've seen them on the field. And if you're drafting a rookie, chances are you're hoping to keep them. So for now, I'm not cutting any rookie draft picks. I always tend to lean toward the incumbent in these first rankings. That's not true at every position. I broke that rule a little bit as I went through this. I have 2 UDFAs making the roster. We'll talk about that. And also, okay, it is not me trying to predict the future. This is not me saying in 3 months when you are making final cuts, this is what I expect to happen. I am saying this is, if I had to declare a 53-man roster right now, this is what it would be. So we got that. We good? You feeling good?
Feeling good.
All right. Feeling good. Feeling great. Let's do it. So going to share my screen here. I'm going to scroll right past this weird, terrible screenshot that
folks can follow along with us at WWL.com.
They can. Yeah, this is an article on WWL.com. So if you'd like to, I do have breakdowns for every position that kind of hopefully mirrors what I'm saying here. Hopefully I'm not lying about my own takes, but hey, sometimes it can be tough. I'm not just reading these off, so maybe I did make mistakes. Whatever. So let's start with quarterback. Right now, Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener. I'm keeping those three. I'm cutting Hunter Dekkers. This is not a projected depth chart, although I think that is probably the order that I would have them in terms of if you're giving out betting odds for which one was probably going to take the job and the backup job. That would be it. The question I have is, does Kellen Moore want to keep three quarterbacks, or does he want to go with two and keep one on the practice squad?
Right. That's where I was going to go right away.
The goal this year should be continuity for these young players. And I think you're going to have a core group of three with a fourth guy kind of off to the side as a developmental option. And you're going to want to kind of keep that nucleus of camaraderie with the quarterback position as you go.
Yeah. You think so? You think three quarterbacks will be on the active roster this year?
I think so, yeah. Because and keep in mind, you can have that emergency third quarterback inactive on game days, but still can play, right?
Yeah.
So there's more value than there had been in, obviously this rule has been around for a couple of years now, but there's more value in having three than there would have been in the past. Because what if both your quarterbacks go down? Obviously Taysom Hill should be on the roster, but where is he? I do think probably you're going to keep three quarterbacks. And my question is it Haener, or do you keep a younger, higher upside guy like Hunter Dekkers?
Right.
And I don't even know if higher upside is the term. It's more just bigger amount of unknowns at this point in Hunter Dekkers. I don't know, but for now, until we see it play out on the field, I'm going to project that it's going to be Haener.
When I saw this too, that was my immediate thought. But then you preface this going into it's like, if you're making it right now based on what we know, and yeah, we haven't seen jack squat from Hunter Dekkers except for a little bit at rookie mini camp. But we kind of talked about this off air with Jake Haener. It's like you kind of feel like the hot seat's there with Hunter in the mix now.
Yeah, this is what Kellen had to say about the QB competition as it's going to play out this week and throughout OTAs.
I think it's going to be a lot on the process and less on the results as you go through this phase, just because, again, there's not much competitiveness. We will do some 7-on-7, but, a lot of it's just their understanding. They're taking the classroom to the field for the first time. And so, most of the decision-making factors obviously will come in training camp and preseason football, but this is certainly a nice little step for them.
That what he said there is important in that you're not going to have any 11-on-11 drills. There's not going to be any full team work. I'm not an expert on the CBA, but I would imagine there is something involved in, you're not allowed to do full 11-on-11 work. I think you're not allowed to have contact, which you can't have blocking without contact. So basically like 7-on-7 stuff with no pass rush is all you can really get done. And I think that's why it's important to say this. People are going to be very tempted to make hardline assumptions or hardline determinations on where the quarterback battle is, on who's in front, on this, that, and the other thing, when in reality, I don't know if these practices, yes, they're going to matter to some extent, but I don't think you're really going to be moving a needle in any direction based on what happens here, especially not based on what we see for an hour on one of the 3 days. So if you see, there's a chance that somebody goes out there and looks fantastic. There's a chance somebody out there goes out there and looks great. But if you see anyone out there being like, I've decided, like, this is what's going on because I saw it, I think they're just, blowing smoke.
I got a new drinking game for us this year too, Jeff. Anytime that Kellen Moore says process, take a sip.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. Any more thoughts on the quarterback before we move on?
Definitely curious to get in there and just see all these guys in action, just because we got a taste of what Dekkers and Shuck could do at rookie minicamp, but that wasn't a whole heck of a lot. And just, coming into this year, Rattler and Haener definitely going to have that bigger chip on their shoulder looking to prove something. So it is a young group, but anxious to see what each guy ends up bringing to this competition. And then we're not, you mentioned it right now, it's more of teaching and learning in the organized team activities, and things aren't really going to get heated up temperature wise and competition wise until training camp.
No, and I think, if I'm Spencer Rattler, I'm thinking like, hey, this is my chance to win a starting quarterback job. Like, you don't get a lot of the, as a 5th round pick, I don't care what level of, upside you had as a 5th round pick, whether you felt like you deserved to be there or not, whether you thought you should have been a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick, it doesn't really matter. People drafted in that situation don't get a lot of opportunities to win quarterback jobs. And whether that's as a bridge option for the guy that's probably going to take that job eventually, or just, to take it and never give it back, like, you don't get a lot of those opportunities. So as Spencer Rattler, even if you feel like, man, I'm a little behind the 8 ball in the sense that I was drafted by the former regime and they drafted their guy here, this is my chance to go and just win that job. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be all in on this. And worst case scenario, the Saints feel like, hey, we have a backup option with several games of starting experience that's learned this offense, that can work with the guy in front of him, and you have a core of a starting QB and a backup QB on rookie deals. There are worse places to be, but we'll have to see. Moving forward, running back / fullback. Now, I'm keeping 3, and we can get into that more. One of the reasons you're only having 3 is because there's no fullback on the roster right now. A lot of NFL teams don't keep fullbacks on the roster, but the Saints have traditionally been one. Obviously, it's a new offense. The Eagles did have a fullback last year, but it sure looks like this is going to be a team that does not carry a fullback. That's going to impact the tight end position, I think, in terms of you got to have someone to block. But right now, I'm going with Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Devin Neal on the keep line. I'm only keeping 3. And then on the cut line, Marcus Yarns, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Velus Jones Jr., who is a running back on this roster, and Xavier Valladay, a guy they brought in midseason last year as a practice squad contributor. And that's kind of where I am. Where do you land on that list?
I get it. Like you said, these are your initial, right now, having to make a judgment. Kendre Miller's the tough one for me just because of the injury history we've seen from him and how motivated this guy's going to be. Hopefully it's the fact that Dennis Allen's out the picture. We know him and DA kind of butted heads, and he's looking at it as a fresh start to try and prove himself all over again with Kellen Moore in the mix.
Yeah, the reason I'm keeping Kendre Miller on this list for now is pretty simple, and it's that he's the most talented player on the Saints roster, not named Alvin Kamara, at least at the running back position, right? Like, there's no questioning the talent level. When we've seen him on the field, he's played well. He just hasn't been on the field. And so this is not me saying he's going to make the roster. This is saying, like, if I'm basing this on talent alone, he's got to be on the roster. Now, a lot of this is going to be determined by, does he go out there? I mean, we won't see it in OTAs, right? But is he going to go out there in training camp and actually be there, right? Is he going to be able to make it through a camp healthy? Is he going to do the prehab so that he's not, because to some level, hamstring injuries are bad luck, but to an even greater degree, they are, did you do the work to make sure you were not in a position to injure your hamstring, right? And I just don't think that there's a lot of belief from the past coaching staff, or there was a lot of belief from the last coaching staff that was happening. So we'll see, right? But you drafted Kendre Miller in the 3rd round because he was a top-end prospect. You drafted Devin Neal in the 6th round. Now, that doesn't guarantee you a spot, but I do think it's an indicator that, hey, you like this guy. You liked him more than Marcus Yarns. Otherwise, you would have drafted Marcus Yarns. I do like Marcus Yarns. I do like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah.
So if Kendre doesn't have it, the question becomes, is it which one of those two is most likely? And Velus Jones, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to see. I'm not sure how he's going to look at running back, if he's going to fit. If you did remove Kendre Miller right now, who would be your replacement?
To me, I would think Clyde, and I'm curious to see what Kellen Moore can maybe get out of him. He's, came into the league, made a splash, but then, has not really been that big of a factor the last couple of years. And, being back home in Louisiana, just curious to see. The guy's still young at the position of running back, and I know the talent's there for Clyde, but can he get over some of those mental hurdles?
Yeah, he's only 26 years old.
Yeah.
Feels like he's been in the league forever. He's only 26 years old. And even at running back, that's young. At running back, that's where you would be if you were a star first round pick, which Clyde was a first round pick. If you were a star, you'd be talking about getting franchise tagged or signing that big second contract. Obviously, it didn't happen for him. But yeah, no. So I think pass catching. I think whoever.
Yeah.
If it's not Kendre, and if you're trying to figure out, we just want someone on the roster who we think can contribute. It's probably because you feel like that guy can catch passes at a high level. And a veteran option would make a little bit more sense because I can stash Marcus Jones on the practice squad if I need to. I could probably stash Velus Jones on the practice squad if I need to. I think if you cut Clyde, he's probably getting claimed. Although he might be, he might have enough accrued experience that he bypasses waivers. I'd have to check. Either way, I think he would have interest. So cutting him would be a little different than some of these other guys. Either way, that's where I am now. And again, this is just the beginning of this list. These guys are going to have to go out there and show something. I'm excited to see what Devin Neal has.
Yeah, for sure. Like that was definitely one of the late round picks from this team that they didn't get so many high marks for their early selections. I feel the Saints, but late in the draft, and he was one of them that Neal was called one of the steals of this year. So anxious to see what he provides with this some punch to this offense.
Yeah, and it's not unheard of to see a 6th round pick, a late round pick come in and contribute right away. Look at the kid from the Bucs last year. His name is escaping me. Bucky Irving? Bucky Irving. It's weird. I couldn't remember his name until I said Bucs, and I was like, wait, got it. But look at Bucky Irving, right? What was he? Where was he picked out of Oregon? He was a 4th round pick. Still, okay. You're talking about a day 3 pick, obviously a little earlier in the draft, but when we talked to Joel Thomas, and this stuck with me because it's a pretty bold take. When we talked to Joel Thomas prior to the draft, one of the things he said was he compared this year's running back class to the 2017 running back class. And what was significant about the 2017 running back class is, yes, you had stars. You had like Christian McCaffrey in there and Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round, but you also had guys like Chris Carson in the 7th round. And if you don't remember Chris Carson, that's fair because he had a short career, but he had a pretty prolific career when he was out there. So like he felt like there were some productive players that were going to be on the board late. So I don't think it's a surprise that the Saints ended up with one of them.
Yeah, and you mentioned Yarns. That's another guy of the undrafted bunch that has gotten a lot of buzz before we've really seen much of anyone.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, people tend to get excited about UDFA running backs mainly because there's a lot of good highlights of them. Right?
Running backs and tight ends.
Yeah, like you're not going to see highlights of the DB out of UTSA, so people aren't going to get excited about what was Dallas Beanham, right? Like, but you can watch a 20-minute highlight reel of Marcus Yarns just feasting on whatever teams Delaware was playing, So it's easy to get excited about that player. That said, in those highlights there were a lot of positives in those highlights, and you have to, you can't just say, well, he played lower level competition, so I don't want to take it seriously. Like you have to look at what he was able to do, and I think he's a powerful one-cut runner who can catch, and that's not a terrible thing to be. Next up, tight end. I'm keeping 5.
I know. I was surprised you kept so many.
Well, for one thing, I don't know where Taysom Hill is going to be.
Yeah.
If he starts on the PUP list, that's only 4. And if you don't really consider Taysom Hill a tight end, then he's kind of just an extra position. So I kept 5. And then keep in mind, you're not keeping a fullback. But you still need someone to line up in the backfield and block occasionally. That doesn't mean not having a fullback doesn't mean that you're going to be running exclusively 2 running back sets or that you're never going to have a lead blocker. It means that you're probably going to be using an H-back a good chunk of the time. So who's that going to be? I'd guess it's going to be Jack Stoll. So I think that carves out a spot for him on the roster that may not have existed in the Adam Prentice era. And then beyond that, you're talking Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, obviously Taysom Hill, and then Maliki Mataval. Like I said, I'm trying not to cut any of my draft picks. And I think that when it comes down to it, that player that I'm keeping on the roster, but probably having inactive a lot of weeks, as if everyone's healthy, is a guy that profiles to be that blocker player, that bigger bodied blocker that I need to operate my offense and can pair with Juwan Johnson over the next several years, a guy I invested in and expect to feature just to a higher degree than I have in the past. That means the cuts are Dallin Holker, UDFA darling from last year, still around, but we'll have to see. Michael Jacobson, a guy who's been around forever, a former basketball player, bigger dude, but isn't that blocking type. Trayton Welch, who's a guy that was brought in after camp last year, more of a depth guy, more of a camp body. But that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, the big question you mentioned with Taysom Hill health-wise, I'm hoping that he avoids the physically unable to perform list to start the year, but it definitely feels early on where he's going to go. There's been not a lot of comments from Mickey Loomis or head coach Kellen Moore about the status of Taysom right now.
No, and I don't know where it's going to go. Like I said this earlier, and I believe this. Like if he was to retire, I think that this is how I'll phrase it. If Taysom Hill went to the team and said, "Hey guys, I'm thinking about retiring. What do you think?" They would be like, "Do what you got to do." That's like that. This team doesn't want to cut Taysom.
No,
but I don't know if they're going to have a role for Taysom. And I don't know if they're going to wait around they're going to want to wait around to see when he's healthy to then incorporate that role for a guy who's in his last year of his contract and is probably gone after this year anyway. So we'll see. But again, I don't know. I'm keeping him on the roster. So don't come at me. I'm keeping him. I'm not getting rid of him. I just think it's a big question mark right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, I just looked and he's going to be turning 35 years old in August.
If it was me, I would be setting up a scenario where I'm transitioning him full-time into the quarterback room and figuring it out from there. It doesn't seem like they're doing that. So we'll have to see. Let's go 2 more positions on the offense. And I would say we can get through them quick, but we just objectively can't. So, so first you have wide receiver. I'm keeping 6 of them. This is a position that it's really going to be, there's probably going to be a lot of volatility in terms of this list might change a good bit. A lot of the positions, maybe like 1 or 2 names change. I could see these bottom 3 names all changing. Or you keeping 6 now, maybe you keep 7. Heck, maybe you keep 5. I don't know. It's tough. It really depends on what Kellen believes in terms of roster construction. And when it was Sean Payton, I had years and years of precedent to go off of. This is what he likes to do. So many players he likes to keep at every position. This is how he operates from here for this. And with Dennis Allen, it was very similar. Like he kept a lot of those same ideas. With Kellen, it could be completely different. So it's a little bit of a guess. That said, the top 3, there's no question. It's Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks.
Right.
Regardless of what you do at the wide receiver position, the success or failure at this position will be based on how do Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks do? Are they available a good majority of the season? Because everyone else down this list, you have intriguing names, but no one that's going to move the needle for you. So the other 3 that I'm keeping right now, and again, I emphasize right now, Cedric Wilson, and that's based primarily on his familiarity with Kellen Moore. They go back to the days in Dallas, both Boise State Broncos, clearly like each other. Kellen had a lot of positive things to say about about Cedric, and he had his best season with the Cowboys. So that's probably, I would be surprised if you move on from him. Then Bub Means, just in terms of, I don't know. I like his skill set. We'll see. And then Dante Pettis, a guy that you brought back for a specific reason. I think that specific reason is to take some of the workload off of Rashid Shaheed in the return game.
That one, at first, the Pettis over Kevin Austin Jr. kind of surprised me, but I was figuring that you were more looking at Pettis' returnability.
Anytime you're talking about the 6th or 7th wide receiver on a roster, it's got to be a special team skill set. Otherwise, keep an extra defensive back. The cuts, Moochie Dixon, Mason Tipton, last year's camp darling, who had a ton of opportunities. I mean, players come into the league dreaming about the type of opportunities that Mason Tipton had as a UDFA last year, and he did not deliver on any of them. So that's not going to help his cause. Like, one of the benefits of being a UDFA is you don't have tape. But one of the downsides is when you go out there and you don't, and it's not good tape,
right?
That's a problem. So all he has is tape where he didn't deliver, and that's not going to help him. That said, maybe he develops. Like, I'm not going to say he doesn't have a chance. He's still on the roster. Donovan Peoples-Jones is another cut. Talk a little more about him in a second. Then Chris Tyree, Kevin Austin Jr. These are all guys. So Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kevin Austin Jr. You're looking at Bub Means. Now, Bub Means, I think, develops into Donovan Peoples-Jones at the NFL level. Would you prefer to just skip a step and bring in Donovan Peoples-Jones and have him on the roster, or Kevin Austin Jr. is kind of like in the middle of those two guys? I don't know. Like, that's going to be something we determine in camp. I like Bub Means' skill set. I think he's going to get the inside track, but if he doesn't deliver, I could see him easily getting replaced.
Yeah, and we know, unfortunately, the injury issue becomes something with all these guys. We'll see what happens there, but yeah, this is a pretty highly contested group for camp, and there's definitely that need for that contested catch guy, which Kellen Moore did rave about Cedric Wilson Jr., but you're going to need some more of those cats in the mix.
Yeah, I think of the bottom three, Cedric is probably the safest, just because of the relationship and his ability to help translate Kellen's offense to some of these other guys throughout the course of the season. Like, there's value there. Bub Means and Dante. Okay, Dante probably is safer than Bub, just because at the end of the day, you can say, we need someone to return kicks. And I don't want Rashid Shaheed, a guy who I'm dedicating my offense around, to be constantly doing that. I'm going to give him one of those units. I'm going to say probably punt return will be Rashid and Pettis would be kick return. But just because I think that the likelihood of taking bigger hits is higher on kick return than it is on punt return. Plus, I like Rashid's ability to save me yards on punts. And I don't know if Dante's a guy I trust as much, but plus Rashid has 2 punt return touchdowns already in his career. He's only played in 20 games. So it's a weapon for you. So that's where I'm at.
Either was on Sports Talk or last episode. There's been that buzz around trading Chris Olave. I'm just not buying it.
I mean, I'm sure there are teams that would like to trade for Chris
maybe
Olave.
Steelers created buzz. Yeah, the Saints aren't out there shopping him around.
I don't think the Saints have any interest in trading Chris Olave. And the reason is, it's like if you invest in an asset and then do you trade it when it gets at its lowest point, or do you kind of say, it's going to bounce back eventually? And then if we do want to move on from it, we'll at least get a better value. That's where the Saints are right now. Like, they picked up his option. It's a similar situation the Saints were in with Brandon Cooks going into the final year of his contract. The difference is Saints didn't pick up his option, and they had a superstar wide receiver in Michael Thomas, who was, the problem was Mike was going to get all the targets and Brandon wasn't good with it. It's not really what's going to happen here. Chris is still going to get those targets. And so you picked up his option knowing that next year, if you do want to move on from him, you don't want to extend him, then you can trade him. But you wouldn't do that now. The reason the Steelers want to trade for him is because they feel like they can get a good deal on it, and that's the reason the Saints aren't going to trade him. Anyway.
That's someone that we know, at least we see from the pictures that the Saints have been posting already today. He is going to be at the OTAs, Olave, and been seeing pictures at practice. He seems to be sporting a winter, wool cap on. So I don't know if that's what that's all about.
Probably trying to get back into shape. He hasn't played the game since week 9 of last year. Like, that's tough. Now, from a health perspective, I don't have any questions about his participation, but the question is going to be, can he avoid concussions, right? One more concussion, I don't know. Is that going to end his career? I genuinely don't know. So we'll see. One more position on the offense, and that's obviously offensive line. For now, I'm not projecting. I projected the positions here, but I'm kind of just keeping them as stable as possible. And that would mean keeping everyone at their positions from last year and just slotting in the best option at the open position, which I think is, maybe what the Saints end up doing. If they feel like Trevor Penning is a better right tackle than left guard, if they feel like Trevor Penning is a better option right now at right tackle than Calvin Banks, and they feel like Trevor Penning is a better right tackle than left guard, they probably keep him at right tackle in his final year of his contract. So we'll see. And we'll start to determine stuff when we get to minicamp. Probably not a ton during OTAs, although they will line up and we'll get an idea.
I just feel like people are going to lose their shit if they say the Saints drafted a left guard with the 9th overall pick.
I don't really care what people say. I'm just going to be completely honest. Like, at the end of the day, is this your best 5?
Right, I hear you.
Because if Trevor Penning right now would be a better right tackle option, also a position Calvin Banks hasn't played, then Kelvin would be, and Trevor Penning is a better right tackle than left guard, I mean, that would make that's your best 5 players. And I want to get my best 5 on the field. Anyway, so we'll see. Either way, that's what I have right now. The starters, there's no question. It's just really a matter of how you deploy them. Is Tallahassee Fuaga left tackle. Then I have Kelvin Banks. You can call him a tackle and call him a guard, whatever. Center Eric McCoy. Right guard Cesar Ruiz. Right tackle Trevor Penning. That's 4 first-round picks and a high second-round pick. The investment is there. Now they need to play like it.
Yeah, the addition in the offseason of Radins is the only one I could see maybe slotting in at that left guard spot.
I don't think so. I think you're playing these 5. And maybe if you want to keep Kelvin at tackle and Trevor just doesn't hack it at guard, like I think you would probably give Trevor the chance to move over there and see what he does. But if he doesn't, then you would have a guy behind him. And that's so with I have them keeping 9, which you could argue they should keep 10, whatever. I have them keeping 9. And the reason is, my backups, because I have such a young offensive line, and it's a very young group, even though it's all his first-round picks. So I'm going to prioritize experience behind them. I want experienced backups behind my younger starters. And that would mean Landon Young, Dylan Radins, Will Clapp, Nick Saldiveri, a group that between them has 69 starts in the NFL. Nice. That's a lot. And like Landon Young has a ton of starts, or Landon Young, I think, has like 12 starts. Dylan Radin has something in like the 30s. Will Clapp is in double digits. Saldiveri, I think, started 9 games. So I like that. And between them, I have Landon Young, who's played tackle and guard. I have Dylan Radins, who's played tackle and guard. I have Will Clapp, who's played guard and center. And I have Saldiveri, who's more of a guard. So between those 4 guys, I have every position covered.
Yeah, I mean, I think this looks great to me as far as the layout here of who you're keeping on that O-line and the cuts that are potential, practice squad guys here.
Yeah, and so for the cuts, Josh Ball, who's the guy they brought in this offseason, I think he's a tackle. Josiah Ezram, who's a 7th-round pick from last year. Maybe he pushes a guy like Saldiveri. The problem is you have Landon Young and Dylan Radins, who are both kind of experienced at the tackle position and started games at the tackle position. So it would take a lot for me to push them off that line. Then Kyle Hergel, who was a UDFA from last year, played a couple games at guard. Easton Kilty, who is a UDFA, and Torricelli Simpkins III, which is quite a name, who is also UDFA. I think Torricelli Simpkins is a guy that I think people will catch people's eye throughout camp, because he's a beast. He's a big dude. He can move bodies. And I think he's going to be impressive. I don't know, like from a technique perspective, I don't know exactly where he is, but you see him out there and he looks every bit like a starting NFL guard. And so I don't know, maybe again, a guy like Saldiveri, who this team's not going to have nearly as much investment in as the last coaching staff. Because remember, they traded up to take Saldiveri at the top of the 4th round. They were invested in that pick. This group isn't. They're not going to say we're keeping Saldiveri because they drafted him. So if a guy like Simpkins comes out, or even a Hergel comes out and just looks really good, then they could push him off that line. But for now, that's it.
Yeah, and I mean we mentioned it with organized team activities, no context, so we're not going to get any clearer picture after we see these 3 sessions that we get to witness.
Yeah, and like I'm not going to come out after these and say I'm going to change this up. Maybe at the end of the OTA sessions when we see 3 of them, or probably after minicamp when we see 3 full practices and get some contact, because we're not going to learn a lot about this over the next month plus.
Right.
These are things that we learn in training camp and the preseason games. But all right, any other notes on the offense before we shift over to defense?
No, sir. Let's hit the D.
Let's hit the D, as Steve puts it. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. I am Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. And you can follow the show at Saints_pod. You can follow me at Jeff_Nowak, at Steve Geller WWL. Make sure to subscribe. Otherwise, we'll be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. It has been hot the last few days. And I tried to explain this. I never did get my mother to appreciate this, because she lived in Connecticut, and she would always say like, "Oh, it's so hot," and then be like July, and I'd be like, "I'm sure it is hot. I'm sure you believe that it's hot." The problem is we have your hottest July day on May 15th, right?
Facts.
Because that's what it's been like. This week has been rough. Like, I would be surprised if they have all of these sessions outside this week because these guys aren't going to make it. Some of these younger players who've never dealt with this before, they're going to have a hard time. Like Spencer Rattlers from Arizona, Tyler Shucks from Arizona, they'll be fine. But I don't know. You know, like
You'll get the bullshit of, oh, it's a dry heat in Arizona.
yes. Oh no, it's the humidity is what really gets them. Like a Devin Neal who's never left Kansas. Like he's gonna have a hard time. Some of these offensive linemen, they're gonna be losing weight fast.
No, they're like, holy shit, this is May?
Yeah. And even the rookies from last year, like a Christian Boyd, they did most of their work up in Irvine or over in Irvine, rather.
Yeah.
They did most of their work in the nicest conditions known to man. Not the case. And so that is going to be a question that we learn about Kellen is just how invested is he in having these people sweat to the point where they're asking if they're really that committed to this.
Yeah, because, you know, we're there melting, trying to write down stuff as sweat drips down our arms, and we don't have the helmets and the padding on.
There was one year it was so bad that I had to stop putting my notebook in my back pocket because I would sweat through my pants and my notebook would become unreadable or usable. Like it was like literally just a wet notebook. And it's just, yeah. Anyway.
Nice. You got booty sweat all over it.
Yeah. It's in the grossest kind of
right.
sweat. But I know, again, I'm fascinated to see how Kellen handles it because, you know, I guess he has been with the Cowboys.
But yeah, they even had camp in California.
Yeah. Right. So like, we'll see. Either way. We're still breaking down the roster. We're going to switch over to the defensive side of the ball, also special teams. And we'll start with
D.
Get into the D. Focus on the D. We're going to start with defensive line. And the most notable thing about this position is I had to zoom out to fit all the names in. There's a lot of names on this freaking list. I think it's 17. And that to me is an indicator that they're trying to figure out some stuff. Like they're trying to find out who can play this scheme, who can fit this scheme. I think you got some players, a good number of players that are kind of etched in stone, like Carl Granderson. I don't think is going anywhere. Cam Jordan, Chase Young, obviously extended Chase Young, you know, so you're not doing anything with him. Brian Brzee is as safe as you can be. Vernon brought in the 3rd round pick. He's definitely making the roster, obviously. Devon Godshaw, you traded for him. He's really your only established nose tackle on this depth chart, or at least that's played in the NFL. So he's probably on the roster. But then from there, you know, a guy like the guys I have them keeping right now, Jonah Williams, Fadil Diggs, Colin Saunders, Isaiah Foskey. Thoughts?
Going into this year, probably mentioned it before, but I was just surprised the Saints decided to bring back both Saunders and Nathan Shepard, just because with the new scheme coming in, we'll see how that, you know, ends up shaking out with Brandon Staley running things now. But yeah, I mean, Foskey too is another guy. You better bring it this camp because, you know, we've heard even Dennis Allen wanting to let loose and unleash, and I just feel like we still haven't seen that potential unleash from Foskey.
Yeah, I agree with you on Shepard and Saunders. I don't think they both make this roster, so it was strange to bring both of them back. They restructured both of those contracts too.
Right.
So maybe it was a bit of that. You were just trying to free up some money at a certain point. I don't know. But yeah, I have them keeping Saunders and cutting Shepard, which, I mean, you could flip those. I just think interior, like nose tackle type players are going to be at a premium, whereas, you know, you have enough 3-4 defensive ends, I think. But yeah, so Jonah Williams is a guy that I don't know a ton about, but they did go out and sign him this offseason. I think he does fill a need. Fadil Diggs is a rookie. Like I said, I'm not cutting rookies right now. We'll have to see how he looks the part. That's for sure. Like he's a big dude and he's experienced in college. Foskey is tough. And, you know, in part because I think that he could fit in a role that he hasn't really played before, which is kind of a 3-4 outside linebacker role. Because I think he has the athleticism that some of these guys don't And he just hasn't. I just think he was a little undersized. He didn't have the physicality to fit in that big body 4-3 defensive end look. But we'll see. He just doesn't. I don't think he's developed the pass rushing arsenal that is conducive at the NFL level. You really only need 2 moves, but if you're only going to have 2 moves, you need to be really, really effective with those moves. So we'll see. For now, I'm keeping him up there for the same reason I'm keeping Kendre Miller, in that he was a 2nd round pick because he's a talented player. And right now he's the most talented option of the 8 names, including him, remaining. On the cut line, I have Chris Rumpf, who's a guy that the Saints went out and signed recently. Former Chargers player, worked with Brandon Staley before, was a draft pick when Brandon Staley was there. Christian Boyd, who's a defensive tackle out of Northern Iowa, they brought in last year in the 6th round. John Ridgeway, who was a player they traded for midway through last camp, I believe, from Washington. Nathan Shepard, as we talked about, and then 2 UDFAs, Jasheen Davis, Omari Thomas.
Yeah, with those, I know Ridgeway's a guy we've seen a little bit of, and maybe someone that ends up sticking around in the practice squad. But for your active roster, I'm with you on this. We'll see what Foskey can do, but I feel like this season, though, you want to say hot seat, whatever it is with him, the pressure's on Foskey right now to show us anything.
Yeah, I think when you're a 2nd round pick, year 2 is guaranteed for you. You would have to do something crazy to not get back for year 3, or to not get back for year 2. Year 3 is a little different. Like, you got to deliver by year 3. And here's the thing with Foskey, and keep in mind, Phil Galliano is still the special teams coordinator, is Foskey has been a core special teamer. Right. There is value there. You do need players who will get out there, particularly now. You're going to have to cover a lot more kicks than you did in the past, and block for kicks. So you need guys, you need bigger bodies who are willing to do that, right? Like, when it was just punt coverage, you really only needed to worry about your offensive line, and then it's a jammer. There's a much different scenario now that you have to actually cover kicks and return kicks at a higher rate. So that's going to be a factor for him. Every year we go into this and everyone overlooks, okay, he's a special teamer, whatever. That's going to be a feather in his cap. Is it enough? I don't know. Some of these other guys. John Ridgeway is a tough one for me because while he did play a lot last year, I thought he was as significant as anyone else in not playing the run well. I don't think he handled it well at all. Colin, I think, didn't either, but he at least got after the quarterback, and he just has a skill set that I think is attractive in that the athleticism and the size and the low center of gravity that not a lot of these other guys have. Like, I just saw so many examples of guys getting knocked 3, 4, 5 yards off the line. Like, there was one play against Washington that John Ridgeway got pushed so far back that he made a tackle 5 yards downfield. It wasn't because he made a play. It was because that's where he was. And the play got funneled to him. Like, that's not where you want to be as a defensive tackle. So we'll see. Like, we're going to learn a lot about the defensive scheme. This is a position that is tough to gauge right now, but I kind of feel good about it. Moving on. Linebacker, inside linebacker, not outside linebacker. I didn't break this up as inside outside, but this is inside linebacker. And this is another one that it's tough to gauge right now. I'm keeping 5, and 3 of them I feel good about in Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Danny Stutzman. You're not cutting the rookie that you took in the 4th round. So that's my top 3. And then I'm also keeping Jalen Ford, who benefits greatly from being a former Texas Longhorn in this scenario, because this is a team that seems to value former Texas Longhorns right now. That was not the case when he was drafted, but it is the case now. They have their defensive line coach is a former Texas defensive line coach. Their defensive pass game coordinator is the former Texas defensive pass game coordinator. They drafted Kelvin Banks. They drafted Vernon Broughton out of Texas. Like, there's a lot of Texas vibes on this defense and this team in general right now. So that's definitely not gonna hurt his case. I think it's gonna help him too.
Yeah, the one for me that was kind of, I don't want to say surprised, but the one on the cut list that stood out was Nephi Sewell, just because I know what he meant for special teams, but it is the past regime that I know really, really love what he did.
Yeah, and so I'm keeping Tyreen Powell, a UDFA out of Rutgers, and it's because I kind of see him as a tweener. And I think that's going to benefit him here. I think he's going to be a key special teams contributor, and because he's a little bit bigger, and I don't need 4 or 5 inside linebackers who do a lot of the same things. I want a guy who can get inside, get in, get outside, kind of move around, be more of a hybrid player. And this is a guess by me. We'll see how it goes. Again, like you mentioned, Nephi Sewell, DeMarco Jackson, Isaiah Stalbert are all on the cut line. These are all guys from last year. And typically I will place a higher value on the incumbents than I have in this scenario because they're a known commodity. But the Brandon Staley's defense is a completely different situation. So I just don't know. It's tough for me to sit here and say like, oh yeah, like he's going to really like Nephi Sewell. Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. Right. So right now I like Tyreen Powell. I think his skill set is interesting. He's a big dude. He's 6'5", 230. You know, like you're not going to have a traditional Sam linebacker, but I think there will be situations where I want to be able to put a bigger body on the field, especially against run heavy teams. So we'll see. But right now, he is one of 2 UDFAs I have making this 53-man.
Yeah, and I think obviously we're mentioning Jalen Ford. That's another question mark. We just don't know. That Texas connection could certainly help him out.
Yeah, and Anthony Orji has already been waived.
Right.
He was claimed by the Titans, so he's not a guy that they can bring back. That's just where it is right now. You don't need as many inside linebackers in this scheme as you needed in the previous scheme, right? That's just a fact. So I think you do need them on special teams. So That's why you're still at 5. But I don't think you're going to keep 6. Definitely not keeping more than 6. All right. Next position. Cornerback. I'm keeping 5. I'm keeping Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Ike Yadam, Quincy Riley, Rico Payton. On the cut line, I have Trey Flewellen, Rejon Wright, and Dallas Beenham, a UDFA. If you wanted to make the argument that you should probably only keep 4, I would definitely hear you out. But I'm keeping 5. I'm keeping an extra DB, whether it's a cornerback or a safety, who I feel really good about on special teams. And last year, Rico Payton was a standout on special teams.
Yeah,
Phil Galliano, one of his bigger roles was identifying gunners, jammers, and coaching them up. And that's how you ended up with a JT Gray. It's how you ended up with, and Rico Payton was a standout player in that regard last year. So like when you talk about, the defense is new and the defensive coordinator and the defensive pass game coordinator and all these coaches are new, the guy who's probably the biggest impact in Rico Payton making this roster is not new, and that's Phil Galliano. And so I have the 4 cornerbacks at the top of this list as my top corners in Alontae, Kool-Aid, Ike Yadam, and then Quincy Riley, and you're going to set that up however you need. And the last one is special teams.
Yeah, I like the way you laid this out. The biggest thing to me is when you look at this cornerback group now, man, it's a huge slap to me, at least, not seeing, Marshawn Lattimore or Paulson Adebo in the mix. And you look at the rest of the list, it's like, wow, this position group looks a hell of a lot different, man.
It really does. It really does. And I mean, like, it's funny because 3 of the names on this list you'd seen before, or 4 of them you'd seen before, right? But it still looks very different. Like last year it was Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry, but they were further down, Right. Ike Yadam was here 2 years ago. But yeah, it's gone from a position where you feel like, well, that's a massive strength to a major question mark. Because I don't know where Alontae is going to play. He's probably going to be in the star role in Brandon Staley's defense, basically that nickel hybrid role. Kool-Aid is going to be an outside corner. Ike is probably going to be similar to how he was used in terms of he'll probably be outside in nickel or whatever you want to call nickel, and inside and Alontae goes outside when you're in base. Again, those terms are going to change from what we know them to be in the past. But this makes sense to me. I would love for one of these guys to come up, one of these younger guys to come up and make an impact. But you only have 8 corners on the roster right now, which is not a big number.
Yeah, like I said, the rundown looks pretty spot on to me. But when you see which names are missing, it's kind of like, yeesh.
Yeah, right. Right. It would be nice if you still had Marshawn and Paulson, but you don't. Marshawn's on the command. They're both in the NFC East. Marshawn's on the Commanders and Paulson's on the Giants. And Paulson got paid to be on the Giants.
For sure.
Like, I don't know if the injury, the leg injury probably cost him something, but it didn't cost him that much. I mean, I think he got like 3 years, $54 million, which is like, that's a legit contract, especially for a guy coming off an injury who was never even the top corner on his own roster. Anyway, going down. Safety. Another position with 8 total players, but I'm only keeping 4 safeties. So I'm keeping 9 DBs in total, 4 safeties. And that's Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed, Jonas Sanker, again, another rookie, and JT Gray, special teams. That means I'm cutting Ugo Amadi, Jordan Howden, Terrell Burgess, who was a tryout player that the Saints signed after rookie minicamp, and UDFA Elliott Davison.
Yeah, the big one for me is a Jordan Howden, who we're still waiting to see have that breakout, and another dude we can talk about, an all-important year 3 for him.
Yeah, and if you've noticed a trend, it is that keeping 9 players, keeping 9 rookies, 9 rookie draft picks,
right,
is going to force you to cut former rookie draft or former draft picks, right? Like that's just the inevitability when you bring in this many rookies, rookie draft picks, you're going to have to make some tough decisions on past rookies. And so with Jordan Howden, who was a 5th round pick from 2 years ago, again, you're not going to have the same level of investment from a coaching staff that didn't draft you. And it's going to be about what are you doing on the field. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't been that impressed with Jordan Howden on the field. I thought he showed promise as a rookie and spot duty and limited opportunities. He had a ton of chances last year, right? He's kind of like Mason Tipton. Like, you had opportunities to get on the field and you did not deliver in them. So the tape's not going to be your friend. You know, you have that mystery of some of these rookies that you don't have tape, or at least not NFL tape. So the upside is going to be all you look at. In this case, you have 2 years of tape, and it's not going to tell you like, he's going to be significantly better than the rookie we just drafted. So you're keeping the rookie. I'm not keeping 5 safeties, and I'm only going to play when one of them is this. I'm not going to keep 5 safeties if I'm only going to play 2 at a time, and then one of them is a core special teamer, and the other one is a guy who can kind of slot around and be, a player. You're probably going to keep Ugo Amadi on the practice squad as you have. Even Jordan Howden, I think you might stash him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's going to have to show something this year. He's going to have to earn that spot over a guy the Saints drafted in the 3rd round.
Yeah. Howden and Foskey definitely make or break years, you could say.
Last year, their spots felt a little safer than this year where they don't feel safe at all. So I agree with you.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah.
One more position, and it's the one everyone's been excited about. Specialists. I'm not cutting Zach Wood. He is the long snapper for eternity.
But hit the road hay ball.
Till he decides to not do it anymore. My wife once asked me, what if you had to play if you had to be an NFL player, what position would you play? And she expected me to play, say, quarterback or something more fun. And I said, no, the objective correct answer is long snapper. Because you get paid a minimum NFL salary, which is a pretty hefty chunk of change. Your career is going to last 20 freaking years, and no one even knows you're there as long as you do your job right. Right? No, you're never getting cut. Who's cutting the long snapper? As long as you long snap right, you're fine. And that's the only thing you have to do. The other team isn't even allowed to hit you. If they do, it's a penalty on them, and you get a free 15 yards, and you're a hero. If you go down and make a tackle on special teams, you're a hero. If you don't, everyone's like, we don't expect the long snapper to make a tackle. It's the best job in sports. People are like, what about the punter? Like, no, because if you only get 5 chances a game, and if you screw one of them up, everyone hates you. What about the kicker? No, that's the highest pressure position. You couldn't pay me to be a kicker. I don't want that pressure. I could hit 5 kicks in a row. If I miss one, I could go 5 for 6 in a game. If I miss the 6th kick, I'm terrible. If that kick is like a pressure kick. So not worth it. Long snapper is the dream. Parents, have your kids go in the backyard right now and start snapping the ball between their legs 20 yards away. No, don't be a center. Long snapper. It is like printing money. And I'm not making it out as an unskilled thing, but I do think it's like you don't have to be that big and you can become a good long snapper through repetition.
Like you mentioned, Zach Woods now been around how many years here? That job, if you're good at it, you have pretty damn good job security and longevity.
Yeah. There's only 32 of those jobs. But if you get one, never give it up, right? Every year we go through these roster projections, and every year I type Zach Wood without even having a second thought. I don't even know what age he is. I don't know how long he's going to play for, but it's basically until he decides, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And then he can go get a job teaching the next generation of long snappers. Anyway, that's an aside. But the actual positions that are worth talking about.
He's
now,
also Zach Wood, two-time Saints softball home run champ.
The last 2 times. They haven't done it. He is the returning
It's been
champion.
a while.
Whenever they decide to do it again, if they do. But all right, so there's going to be 2 kicking competitions this offseason. And in one of them, I'm breaking my rule, which is I almost always lean toward an incumbent. But I just don't believe in Matt Hayball. No offense to Matt Hayball, but he just didn't do anything that really moved the needle for me. Like he did lead the NFL in kicks inside the 20, but watching that happen in real time, it was like so many of them were in opportunities to potentially pin the team back deep, and he got them to like the 18 or the 15. And a kick to the 18 is only 2 yards better than a kick to the 0, which is the end zone, in which case you don't actually have a chance for a return, so it's a safer kick, right? I don't want to kick to the 18. I want to kick to the 8. So in that sense, like, it didn't do it for me. He doesn't have a leg that's going to flip fields. And if you can say both of those things, then you can do better. And I don't know. I'm going to go on a limb here and say James Burnip is going to be your punter next year. And keep in mind, your special teams coordinator is also a guy that's dealt with rookie punters each of the last 2 years. So he gets the deal. He understands. He's not, that level of volatility is not going to scare him off. So I'm going with James Burnip and cutting Matt Hayball.
It's going to be curious to see. The only thing I've seen from Burnip is, YouTube footage from when he was at Alabama.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's.
But you mentioned with Hayball, there's nothing there that's really that drawing that you feel that need to keep him around.
I mean, it's going to be a competition. He can go out there and win it. Maybe he's developed between years 1 and 2. But nothing last year makes me go into this being like, that's his job to lose.
As for Groupie, I don't know I feel like fans kind of are low on him when I feel like he's been pretty darn consistent.
We're going to have the same conversation this year we had about Blake Groupie. And this year it's going to be even tougher for Charlie Smith, because one of the reasons Blake was a little inconsistent last year was when you went out to Irvine, it was this kind of wide open area with these crazy crosswinds that, is difficult for anyone to deal with. Charlie is a guy who grew up in Northern Ireland dealing with crazy winds all the time. So I think he felt a little more at home in that environment than he did even, in the Superdome. All that said, what's going to end up happening is Charlie's going to go out there and he might make a 70-yarder in practice this year. He generally might. I think he could. But he's going to have to beat Blake Groupie in a competition. And he's going to have to definitively beat him in a competition, right? Because it's tough. Like there's really no metric that says like, this guy made 88% versus this guy made 87%. Yeah, but okay, where were your misses? Did you miss closer kicks? Are you more confident on the longer kicks than the shorter kicks? And what's going to be problematic is you have a first-year head coach and a first-year special teams coordinator and a very high floor kicker that you know what to expect from in Blake Groupie, a guy who made the kicks that you're actually going to attempt in the games, right? How often are you going to even try a 60-plus yarder? Maybe end of game or end of half scenarios, but like that's few and far between. So you're going to have to make your money from 60 and in, because 58, 59, 60 is probably the max you're going to kick in a normal opportunity. And Blake was incredibly consistent on those kicks. He made he made 6, which is the most by any kicker in Saints franchise history. His 2 misses were kicks you probably shouldn't even have attempted. The first one, I think, was 53 yards out in New York. It was cold. It was a windy day. He mentioned that when we talked to him before the Super Bowl, and he was like, I started it way outside the right upright, and it still worked all the way back and missed left. So he was like, there's just no way that was going in. And then the second one was, it was like a 62-yarder on that same day that got blocked. So, like, I mean, if you never attempted those kicks, which you probably shouldn't have, you probably should have tried to get him in a better position or just punted. But either way, the kicks indoors, the kicks in reasonable conditions, he was spot on. The issue with Grupe has been a few short misses, and those have been the most frustrating because you're like talking about from 29. And I think the culprit for that in talking to him is he will say this. He's kicking the same kick from 50 as he is from 29. So when he misses, it's gonna miss hard. Like, there's not a lot of forgiveness when you're kicking it a 50-yard kick from 29. So when you get that starting line wrong, there's not a lot of work back. It's like an arrow. And so that's where if he continues to struggle there, that will open the door for Charlie. I just think it's gonna be tough for Charlie to beat him because he is remarkably consistent. He hits these friggin' laser line straight kicks. And despite that tiny little size, he's able to generate a massive leg. So I think it's going to be another year when this is what happened last year is everyone got enamored with like the crazy long kicks.
Right.
And looked past, well, what about 40 and in? What about 50 and in? What about 60 and in? And so I'm going to project that Blake wins right now. I think it's going to be a legit competition. How enamored is Kellen Moore going to be with Charlie's monster leg to overlook? His only kick to this point has been a preseason kick against the Cardinals last year. I mean, I have a lot riding on this season, and I don't know if I'm going to throw in my lot with a kicker, with such an inexperienced kicker, when I have a high floor option right there. But we'll have to wait and see.
Besides just the field goal aspect of it, I don't feel like either kickoffs were that necessarily that big of an issue for him either.
The one opportunity he had to make a tackle, he made it. So we'll see. I think there's going to be there's going to be some changing strategies this year just because you're going to see a lot more returns. But I don't think that was a problem. I think he kicked one out of bounds all year and it hit the pylon, which is technically out of bounds. I think that was against the Chargers. I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, I didn't see that as being a factor. He had some nice kicks that, I think for kickers on the kickoff, what's going to separate good kickoff people from bad kickoff people is the ability to bounce it inside the landing range while also making sure it's not bouncing to the left or right, making sure it's getting in and kind of being a knuckleball. Because if you allow the returner to catch it on the run, then they have a really good chance. If you force the returner to catch it flat-footed, which is the case if they have to let it bounce and settle and then go, you have a way better chance because the defense gets to move once it hits the ground, not once it's touched. So if you can stretch out the time between the ball hitting the ground to the returner actually touching it, then you have a much better chance of covering it. So either way, that's the last position. We'll see. But either way, these are just my projections right now. Again, I would pick James Burnip right now. And you can call me a hater. I don't care. These are going to be the two of the more interesting, outside of quarter. We'll do a position battles episode prior to camp starting. But the specialist battles are going to be as interesting to watch as any of them.
Yeah, 3 weeks of the organized team activity, voluntary workouts before we get to mandatory mini camp. Things ramp up a little bit there, but training camp is where it's all going to go down, baby.
Well, here's the thing for this, we'll get, there's nothing stopping the kickers. Teams. So I imagine we'll get some, we'll start recording. I don't know when the Saints officially start their competition, but I'm going to start counting kicks this week because these all matter to me. So we'll see.
Get the every day, so-and-so went, 8 for 8 or, whatever it is, and just keeping the log of it.
Exactly. And it's a lot harder than it sounds because you can't, we're standing on the side and the goal, there's no one standing under it saying whether it was good or not. So it's everyone kind of like looking at this weird angle, like, did that go in? Yeah. Okay.
That's when it's great. When the refs do show up, we love that one too.
Yeah. Like I'm sure there have been misses that were like group, like turned into makes because like one person confidently was like, I went in.
Yeah.
And it's usually like, okay, who's got the energy to run over there, and so you can get the actual angle. Anyway, but that's training camp, man. But all right, that's the episode. We got it. We got through it. Hope everyone feels like they learned something.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is it's like we're talking legit football stuff right now, not speculating on so many things.
I'm just glad we got through that episode with only having to talk about Derek Carr like for 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're gone now. We're moving on. We're moving on to the quarterbacks that are here.
Mickey definitely made that clear.
Yeah. We've said everything. Here's the thing. He didn't say anything. We? Who's we? The person who typed up that press release? That's
right.
We?
That was it. That's what they said.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Be easy, y'all. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe.
Shuck it up.